Olivia here. I just wanted to take this opportunity to wish you all a primarily healthy, happy, peaceful.
The theater lights dimmed, and for a moment, silence swept across the crowd. Then her voice rose, clear, soaring, unmistakable. Olivia Newton-John. For millions across the world, that name meant more than just music. It was memory, comfort, defiance against despair. But what happens when the voice of a generation begins to fade? A single motif remained constant through her life: the sound of applause. From London stages to Hollywood premieres, from Melbourne concert halls to Sydney charity events, applause wrapped around Olivia like a second skin. And yet, even applause has a way of quieting. As the years passed, the ovation she once commanded with effortless grace became something softer, almost reverent. A tribute rather than an expectation. Anchored deeply to Australia, Olivia was more than an international star. She was Melbourne's daughter, the girl whose smile felt like sunshine on a Bondi morning, whose songs played on ABC radio long before they circled the globe. Her face beamed from billboards, but it was in school halls, backyard parties, and Sunday drives along the Great Ocean Road that her voice truly became part of the national fabric. The stakes could not be higher. Olivia's story was not just about fame or even tragedy. It was about resilience, about the courage to live with illness in the public eye, about music that outlasts the body, about how one woman could carry both light and shadow, inspiring millions even while fighting her most personal battle. So here is the untold question that lingers still. When the final spotlight dimmed on Olivia Newton-John, did her voice truly fade? Or has it become louder than ever, echoing across generations? A legacy that refuses to fall silent. She was more than a singer. She was the voice of a generation. Olivia Newton-John carried titles like Australia's Sweetheart, Greece's Golden Girl, and the Angel of Song. But behind each epithet lay a story more layered than the smile she offered the cameras. She was radiant on screen, yet fragile in private, adored by millions, yet sometimes shadowed by loneliness. Her career was a series of contrasts. One moment, she was Sandy in Greece, forever etched into pop culture, dancing in leather with John Travolta. The next, she was a woman navigating the unforgiving glare of fame, her every gesture mirrored in headlines across continents. She sold over 100 million records, filled stadiums with screaming fans, won 4 Grammys and multiple ARIA awards. And yet, she spent years in quiet hospitals, facing test results, hoping for reprieve. Imagine the paradox: a star who lit up Times Square but retreated to her farm in Byron Bay for peace. A woman whose image was projected onto global stages, yet who found solace in gardening, horses, and the Australian earth beneath her feet. How could someone carry such duality, both immortalized in cinema and heartbreakingly human in her struggles? The applause, the lights, the ovations, they painted only half the canvas. The other half was darker, yet no less powerful. It was there, in the shadows, that Olivia showed her truest strength. And perhaps that's why her story matters even more. Because it reminds us that icons are not untouchable, that even legends feel fear, fragility, and longing. What did the world truly know about Olivia Newton-John? Was she the eternal Sandy, frozen in a musical's final frame? Or was she the fighter, the mother, the advocate, who stood tall even as time and illness pressed against her? And when the curtain finally fell in 2022, what remained? The star, the woman, or both? Before the glitter of Hollywood and the thunder of stadium applause, there was a quiet childhood marked by books, music, and a family that valued both intellect and creativity. Olivia Newton-John was born in Cambridge, England, in 1948, the youngest of 3 children. Her father, Brinley Newton-John, had once worked as a codebreaker at Bletchley Park during the war. Her mother, Irene, was the daughter of Nobel Prize-winning physicist Max Born. Genius, discipline, and history ran in her bloodline. When Olivia was just 6, her family relocated to Australia. The sun-drenched suburbs of Melbourne became her true home. Picture the contrast, from the gray skies of post-war England to the vivid blue horizons of Victoria. There, she found her rhythm, not in science or academia, but in song. She would strum her guitar in her bedroom, rehearsing ballads that floated out through open windows into suburban streets. Music wasn't just a pastime, it was her refuge. Teachers recalled her shyness, the way she hesitated to speak up in class but came alive the moment she sang. Her voice carried a softness, a purity that seemed older than her years. And yet, beneath that sweetness, there was also a quiet determination. It was as though she already knew the stage would one day be her place. Her early career was shaped in those small, almost unremarkable moments. Singing at school assemblies, joining local talent contests, appearing on local TV programs like The Happy Show. It was on those modest platforms that her voice first began to reach beyond the neighborhood. The applause might have been scattered, polite, uncertain, but it planted a seed. And still, there was a restlessness. Was Melbourne enough for a girl with such a voice? Was a suburban stage destined to be the limit? Or would the young Olivia find herself drawn towards something far greater? A stage that would test not just her talent, but the very core of her resilience. Olivia's rise was not a gentle climb. It was a meteoric ascent. By the late 1960s, she was already singing on Australian television. But it was in London that her career truly caught fire. A girl who once sang timidly at school assemblies now stood under spotlights, where every note mattered. In 1971, her single, "If Not For You," produced by George Harrison's friend and former Beatle Bob Dylan's track, became her first international hit. It was a sign. Olivia's voice was no longer just a suburban secret. It was a sound the world couldn't ignore. The 1970s cemented her as a global star. With "Let Me Be There," she won a Grammy for Best Country Female in 1974, surprising critics who hadn't expected an English-born, Australian-raised singer to conquer Nashville. Then came "I Honestly Love You," a ballad so tender, so universal, it climbed charts across continents. 2 Grammys followed, Record of the Year and Best Pop Vocal Performance. Olivia wasn't just crossing borders, she was erasing them. And then came Grease. In 1978, cinema history was rewritten when she stepped into the role of Sandy opposite John Travolta. The transformation, from innocent girl next door to leather-clad rebel, wasn't just a character arc. It became a cultural phenomenon. The film grossed nearly $400 million worldwide, its soundtrack selling over 28 million copies. Stadiums roared with "You're the One That I Want." Fans fainted at premieres. Security had to hold crowds back. Olivia had become a symbol of a generation. Not just a singer, but a screen goddess. Her glory years extended into the 1980s. With Physical, she shattered records again. The single spent 10 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, while its video pushed the boundaries of what pop stardom looked like. Suddenly, Olivia wasn't just Sandy. She was a trailblazer, balancing wholesome charm with daring reinvention. ARIA Awards, AMAs, even a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She had it all. The numbers, the accolades, the applause. But even in this dazzling success, questions lingered. Was this endless applause a blessing, or a prison disguised in light? Could anyone shine so brightly without feeling the weight of shadows creeping closer? For Olivia, every standing ovation carried with it a whisper of foreshadowing. The brighter the light, the deeper the shadow. Behind the golden smile that defined her image, Olivia carried burdens she rarely allowed the public to see. Fame brought fortune, yes, but it also brought scrutiny, pressure, and moments of isolation. Friends later recalled that she was sometimes consumed by sleepless nights, wondering how long she could keep reinventing herself, how long the applause could last before silence crept in. Her personal life, so often framed in glossy magazine spreads, was far from flawless. Marriages faltered, and relationships came under the magnifying glass of tabloids. In the 1990s, her name was tied to financial turmoil, when her own clothing line and other ventures collapsed. Headlines painted her as both victim and survivor. She kept her composure, projecting grace, yet inside, she was quietly gathering resilience. Then came 1992. Olivia received a diagnosis that changed everything. At the height of her career, she was told she faced breast cancer. The news reverberated across the globe. Some reports suggested she considered stepping away from music entirely. Others believed her spirit only grew stronger in the face of such a trial. What is certain is that she chose transparency. She spoke about it publicly, inviting others into her most private battle. And it wasn't the only storm she weathered. In 2005, her longtime partner Patrick McDermott vanished during a fishing trip off the California coast. Theories swirled, media speculated wildly. But Olivia was left with an ache that words could barely contain. She continued her advocacy, her music, her charities. But behind her public optimism, she carried the unanswered question of loss. How many masks did Olivia wear for the world? Was the radiant smile we knew her by simply a facade, protecting a woman who faced heartbreak after heartbreak? And as her illnesses returned in later years, did she sense the applause would one day fall silent? The shadows lengthened, the battles deepened, and all of it built toward one final, unforgettable moment. August 8th, 2022. The news traveled quickly, and yet, for those who had followed her story, it felt like time slowed to a standstill. At her ranch in Southern California, surrounded by family, Olivia Newton-John reached the end of her journey after years of confronting illness with courage. It was a tragic end, yes, but it was also the closing note of a symphony she had been writing for decades. The light in her room was gentle, filtered through soft curtains. Friends described an atmosphere of peace, as though the world itself hushed to hear her final breath. Outside, the California sun blazed. Inside, there was a quieter glow. The sound of birdsong drifted through, mingling with the faint hum of medical machines. Applause had once followed her from arena to arena. But here, in this intimate space, silence took its place. Silence and love. Her daughter Chloe was at her side, holding her hand. Photographs of Olivia's past performances, sequins shimmering, crowds screaming, now stood like relics in frames nearby. The contrast could not have been sharper. Once the leather-clad Sandy striding across a stage, now a woman gently fading into memory. It was as if the motif of her life, applause turning into stillness, had come full circle. Imagine that moment. A star who once lit up the Sydney Opera House, the Hollywood Bowl, the world itself, now leaving behind an echo. Her voice, captured in vinyl grooves, digital files, concert footage, will outlive all of us. But in that room, as the sun shifted and shadows lengthened, only one question seemed to hang in the air. Had the voice of a generation truly fallen silent? Or had it just transformed into something eternal? In the aftermath of her passing, tributes flooded the airwaves, but so too did questions and narratives. The official fact was clear. Olivia Newton-John had faced a long and public battle with breast cancer, first diagnosed in 1992, with recurrences in 2013 and 2017. She had spoken openly about her treatments, her hopes, and her use of both conventional medicine and plant-based therapies. This honesty gave millions the courage to confront their own illnesses, but the media, as always, sought more. Some reports suggested her embrace of alternative therapies sparked debate in medical circles. Could her advocacy have shifted public understanding, or even courted controversy? Headlines clashed. Some praised her for opening conversations about wellness. Others questioned the choices she made. Yet Olivia herself never claimed to hold answers for everyone. She simply shared her truth, her path, and the hope that it might ease another's pain. There were also whispers tied to her personal tragedies. Patrick McDermott's disappearance in 2005 remained an unresolved mystery, and in the days after her death, old theories resurfaced. Had that loss deepened her own struggles, shaping the final chapters of her life? Friends disputed such speculation, insisting she carried her grief privately, never allowing it to eclipse her joy in giving back. And then came the public theories, the inevitable swirl of what-ifs. Some framed her passing as a heartbreaking close to a heroic fight. Others framed it as a moment when Australia lost not just a singer, but a piece of its cultural identity. The narratives differed, but they collided in one place. Olivia Newton-John's death was more than personal loss. It was a national wound. So, what do we believe? Was Olivia's legacy defined by her illness, by the questions around her treatments, by the mysteries of her private life? Or is it something simpler, stronger? A voice, a smile, a resilience that transcended the theories. And when the debates fade, what remains louder? The controversies or the music that refuses to die? The day the news broke, Australia paused. Radio stations interrupted programming. ABC and SBS ran tributes, and fans left flowers outside theaters from Melbourne to Sydney. In Britain, the BBC replayed Grease, while in the United States, her name trended across every platform. But nowhere was the grief more personal than in her homeland. The Victorian government announced a state memorial, and flags were lowered to half-mast. For many Australians, it felt as if a member of the family had gone. Her funeral was private, but the outpouring was public. The Melbourne skyline glowed pink in her honor. Thousands gathered at Hamer Hall for the state memorial, where John Travolta's message was played. Yours forever, from the first moment I saw you, and forever, your Danny, your John. The Sydney Opera House lit its sails, Bondi Beach held candlelight vigils, and the applause Olivia once received on stage now echoed in silence, in tears, in whispered goodbyes. Her legacy was not only in music, though the numbers remained staggering. More than 100 million records sold, 4 Grammys, countless ARIA honors. It was also in science and hope. The Olivia Newton-John Cancer Wellness and Research Center in Melbourne, which she championed tirelessly, stands as a testament to her courage. For every patient who walks through its doors, Olivia's battle becomes a shield, a comfort, a guiding light. And so, we return to the motif that framed her life. Applause turning into silence. Yet perhaps it is not silence at all, but an echo, a trace of melody that refuses to fade. Where were you when the world learnt of Olivia's passing? Were you in your car, hearing it on the radio? At home, scrolling through headlines? Did you feel, even briefly, that a piece of your own youth, your own memory, had slipped away with her? Her afterglow is everywhere. In school concerts where Hopelessly Devoted to You is still sung, in pink-lit city skylines, in the quiet courage of patience inspired by her openness. Olivia Newton-John's voice was never just hers. It was, and remains, ours. And so the circle closes. From the roar of stadium applause to the hush of a final breath, Olivia Newton-John's life was a journey of light and shadow, triumph and trial. She began as a shy girl in Melbourne, unsure of her place in the world, and ended as a cultural treasure whose voice still lingers in the air. The motif has echoed all along, applause fading into silence, only to rise again in memory. In her passing, the silence did not erase her, it amplified her. It reminded us that every chorus she sang, every cause she championed, every smile she shared still belongs to us. Her voice became part of the Australian landscape, woven into backyard barbecues, wedding dances, and car radios on long coastal drives. And yet, a haunting question remains. When the spotlight dims, what truly endures? The fame, the headlines, the numbers? Or is it something more fragile, more eternal? The way a single song can carry us back to our childhood, to our first love, to a moment we thought we had forgotten. This is where you come in. Where were you when Olivia's music first touched you? Was it in a cinema seat, watching Grease for the first time? On a scratchy vinyl record at home? Or perhaps in a hospital corridor, where her courage gave you hope? Share those memories below, because together, we keep her alive. Her story reminds us, voices may fade from the stage, but they do not fade from the heart. Olivia Newton-John is still here, in the echoes, in the afterglow, in the silence that sings louder than any applause.